Um, Hi, my name is Crispina French, and I am a textile recycling artist, activist, and entrepreneur. And I am here with you live every Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time. I live in Western Massachusetts, and I just did a survey, and I had a whole ton of people respond, like over 800 people filled out my little survey. And the resounding thing that people love the most are free little quick tutorials on how you can keep your textiles out of the landfill. So every Thursday at noon, I'm going to do a different little free thing that can help you kind of think about your textile waste, your textile consumption, which kind of goes hand in hand with your textile waste. And today I thought I would talk to you guys about adding pockets. For me, clothing needs to really serve me. It needs to be comfortable. It needs to fit in with wherever I might be going. If I'm doing a professional presentation, I want clothing that looks professional. If I'm working in my garden, I want to have clothing that serves that activity. So I running, like I run, and I love the pants, the running pants that have the deep pockets so your phone can fit right in there. So there's all kinds of things that I think about when I'm either purchasing or redesigning clothing that are important. And I wanted to show you quickly today. First of all, I just want to say that these little free tutorials last for 15 to 20 minutes. It's not a big time commitment. The recordings will be posted right in the feed that you're watching. So if you're on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, you can go back and access those, the past tutorials. So today we're going to talk about pockets. And I have two different garments here that are kind of fun. I'm going to show them to you. So this is a denim pullover. Like, it's kind of like an anorak, although it does not have a hood. And I found it doesn't have a pocket either. And I've had this garment for, I think I've had this garment for like 20 years. So I love it. I wear it a lot. And I always, every time I wear it, wish it had a pocket. So today I'm gonna add this cool pocket. And I just want to show this to you up close. Actually, there's a little skein of embroidery floss hanging out. This is actually the top of a pair of overalls. So you can see the buttons are here, and then there's pockets here, and then there's I want to make it so that you can put your hands on the sides. So I had this top of a pair of overalls just sort of sitting around my studio, and I just thought, you know what, that is going to make a really cool pocket on my denim shirt that I wish had a pocket. So I'm going to show you the stitch in a minute. This is the other garment that may be a little bit more typical. I love really nice cotton shirts. And I have to tell you that generally these are found in the men's department at the thrift store. And this shirt, I actually Googled it up. It's made by a company called Cego. It's C-E-G-O, custom shirt maker in New York. And it even says that it was made in April '05, it looks like. So I looked it up. The shirt sells for like over $200. I think I spent $3 on it. Maybe it was $5, I don't know. But it doesn't have a pocket. And you know, in the summertime, oftentimes I'm wearing like little shorts or skirts and stuff that don't have pockets either. And I want to be able to stick my phone somewhere. Like, come on, guys, we live in the 21st century. And so, you know, okay, so you're going to put a pocket on a shirt. It's a nice shirt. It's kind of dressy. You can kind of dress it up or not. And of course, you don't have exactly the same fabric to make a pocket that would be like, you know, it would look like it was made like that. But I do have this beautiful Mexican dress, kind of traditional Mexican dress. And I've had this dress, again, I'm going to tell you, for probably 20 years. I think I've worn it like twice. And it's beautiful, and some beautiful, probably Mexican girl, young girl, did all this beautiful hand embroidery all over this dress. And I kind of thought it was a bit of a crime to have it sitting in my closet without anybody being able to see it or appreciate it. Hey, Phyllis! I love ya. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm going to just welcome everybody too, because I see there are a ton of people with me today. Little Miss Altitude. it's hard for me to pronounce the handle sometimes. So rather than spend a lot of time, I just want to say, hey, welcome. Thanks for being here. Pop me a comment if you have any questions. Or if you have ideas of things you'd like to learn that you think I might be able to teach you. So anyways, this pocket I cut out of a panel of this beautiful embroidered dress. And the way I decided on the size was I had another shirt that actually belonged to my husband. And it had a pocket, and I used that shirt to kind of figure out like the pocket placement, the size that I wanted to make the pocket. I didn't want to make it stand out. Like I didn't want it to be too big. I wanted it to accommodate my phone, but I also wanted to use this really pretty embroidery without cutting into it, because sometimes when you cut into like embroidered things, you run the risk of like kind of disrupting the integrity and the solid, you know, it might start to come undone. So I want to show you again on this particular patch that I cut out. The top edge is actually the selvage of the fabric, so I didn't have to fold it under. If I had folded it under, I would have lost some of this really pretty embroidery. So this is just the selvage edge right at the top of the pocket. And then I did, before I got on with you guys, I folded under the cut edges so that I iron them down. So if you're doing this at home and you're following along, first, obviously, you're going to need a garment that needs a pocket, and then you might want to just look at a picture of a garment that's similar, or just imagine how the placement and the size of the pocket that you might want to add. So it doesn't look weird, or it's kind of like how you want it to be when it's done. The good news is that you can always change it if the pocket isn't exactly how you'd like it when you're done. And today we're going to do some hand sewing. So this does not require any kind of sewing machine at all. It does require pins, which I just dropped one of my pins. Let me see if I can, oh, there it is. Cool. So I'm going to show you how, this is going to be the same technique for both garments. And I'm going to show you on this one just because I think it's going to be easier for you guys to see how it goes. So here's my shirt. I have the pocket pinned in all four corners. I have my cut edges turned under on the sides and on the bottom edge of the patch that I'm using for a pocket. And hello, somebody who has a meeting, and I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for coming here. And if you're interested in watching this, like I said earlier, the recordings will be posted shortly. I mean, they'll just post as soon as they're done right on the platform. Okay, so I'm going to start at my top corner, and I'm going to use embroidery floss. And do you see the pocket? There's some white stitches here on the embroidery floss that, on the embroidery here. This is white, and I'm going to use that same color white to stitch around the edge of the pocket. I figured it would tie it in nicely to the background color of the shirt because it's got white in it as well. And it'll kind of bring the two together, kind of using the white to mirror this stitch here and also to tie it into the background fabric. One of the things I like to try to do is try to marry things. So, and actually I imagine that this shirt is going to become kind of emblazoned with a little bit more of the embroidery off this garment. So I was thinking about maybe doing something on the yoke, maybe something on the shoulders, or I'm not exactly sure where, but this is the start of something that might turn into a bigger project. All right, so we've got our pocket pinned. We've got our embroidery floss chosen, the colors chosen right here. I got my white embroidery floss. And I'm just going to show you all these steps because I think sometimes people assume that other people know, and it's just, you make an ass out of you and me if you assume things. My friend Daniel said that to my son when he was a little guy, and I always just thought it was so funny and so accurate. So embroidery floss comes in these weird little skeins that are pretty easy to tangle and really hard to keep from tangling. So there's two ends, and you pull on one end, it doesn't matter which end, and you're going to pull in the direction that the end is coming from the skein, so it comes out in a straight and non-tangled way. All right, then I usually cut my thread about the length of a little bit longer than the tip of my middle finger to the middle of my chest. That way, when I'm pulling the thread through the sewing motion, I don't have to go back and pull it twice, and I probably am not going to run out of thread because it's long enough to stitch around the edge of the pocket. Okay, so embroidery floss comes with 6 ends, and I'm just going to separate the 6 ends into 3s so that it's not such a bulky and kind of thick stitch. I am going to tell you that what I mean when I say stitch, the thickness of your thread or your sewing material and your needle and your fabric all kind of work together. So there's 3 things to consider when you're deciding how much like embroidery floss you want to use. On the denim shirt with that thick pocket that has a really dense seam all the way around the edge, I'm going to use 6 strands. That way it's going to kind of match the thick thread, the thick pocket, and then the thick garment itself will all kind of like work well together. It'll be sturdy. You won't run the risk of feeling like, oh, the pocket's not really affixed as strongly as it might be. So that's a good way to go. Like just consider those 3 things when you're considering how many threads to use. So on this men's dress shirt, nice summer weight, kind of easy cotton, I'm going to use 3 threads. You could actually even go with 2. I find 3 threads easier for you guys to see on video. Okay, now this is beeswax, little beeswax cake that I call, it's 100% beeswax. So if you have a beeswax candle stub in your home, if you want one of these cute little bumblebee beeswax thread conditioning cakes, I sell them in my shop, and my really good friends who are beekeepers make them for us, and they just smell so good. I love the smell, and that, I don't know, beeswax is super special. So what I do, this is called loving your thread. So you take your thread conditioner and you put your thumb down on your thread and run your thread across that cake of beeswax. Do that like a couple, 3 times. And it kind of gives your floss a little bit of body. It changes the texture a little bit, makes it easier to thread your needle. And it also really helps to keep your thread from tangling as you're stitching. I'm not exactly sure why that works, but it certainly seems to. Okay, now I have this needle that I'm going to thread for you. I have a little trick about threading needles. So there's the end of your thread. I'll try to hold it so you can see it. And I'm going to snip it just so it's blunt, like a real straight across the top cut. And then I'm just going to work my needle kind of over those 3 little prongs, if you will. And there you go. No spit involved. I remember teaching, well, now, and here, let me lick my finger. So then I lick my finger like just a tiny little bit of moisture on there. I wrap the thread right around my index finger and I just roll it off. And that'll give you a nice, good size knot, pretty easy peasy, right? Okay. Now, to get started with the stitch, and forgive me if I'm going over things. I'd like to know from people who are watching, hello, Arnold and Spare Bedroom Studio and Gupta Zero Waste, and you guys are rocking it out there. Thank you so much for joining me today. Out there, is there anybody who's watching who has never stitched before? Tell me, like, have you ever stitched before? Do you stitch all the time? Is it something that you're familiar with and wish you did more? Tell me about your sewing experience, if you would. And while you're doing that, I'm going to get this needle started. So I'm going to start in the top corner of my pinned down pocket, and I'm going to put my thread through so I can conceal that knot. So it's in between the folded over inside seam. So it's not, there's like a piece like folded over, the cut edge is folded. And so the knot is kind of tucked between those 2 edges. And then the first stitch, I'm just going to go over the edge of the pocket into the shirt fabric and kind of come out right where I started. Can you see that? Okay, cool. And let me just tell you, this is the way that I'm sewing this pocket on. There are a million different ways you can sew pockets on. The most important thing you can take away from today is that if you have a garment that you really like the fabric of, the shape of, and you're just wishing that it had a pocket, you can add a pocket really easily, and it's fun, and it kind of makes that piece one of a kind and special to you, and people will notice it. People will probably say to you, wow, that's such a cool jacket or shirt or sweatshirt or pair of jeans, and I love that pocket. And you can either tell them that you put it on there yourself, or you can just know in your mind that you did something super cool and that people like it. All right, so to start the pocket off with a lot of sort of additional security, make sure it's not going to go anywhere, I do these 2 stitches. So it goes over the top edge and then it goes over the side edge. And that's just going to secure it. You know how when you look at a men's dress shirt, sometimes there's like 2 rows of stitching at the top of each pocket? You might not know that, but take a look. You'll see that it's reinforced. And that's just to keep it from pulling off out of the fabric if you put something heavy in there. Elaine Rodman, Ann Greenfield. Hey, Ann Greenfield, now you're a blast from the past. And Jennifer and Phyllis, this is so fun. Okay, so now this is what I call a ladder stitch, and I use this stitch in a lot of the things that I sew by hand. So I'm just going to take a few stitches and show you what it looks like, and then I'll show you how to do it. So it's very similar to a whip stitch, except for I really like the perpendicular look when you're stitching, especially when it's going to be high contrast and you're really going to see that stitch. Okay, so do you see these stitches right over here? So the thread's coming through the pocket right now. So I'm going to go over the edge of the fabric of the pocket right into the fabric of the shirt. I'm going to angle my needles to come out about I guess that's maybe 1/4 inch away. Everybody has a different stitch size. It's sort of like knitting. So if your stitches are closer together or further apart, not to worry. You can change it if you like the look of a different kind of gauge better, but it's totally fine to just roll with whatever's comfortable. And I'm just going to take a couple more stitches. So that is how my pocket is going to go onto my shirt. Now, of course, if you're a stitcher and you have a sewing machine and you want to make this quick and take less time and maybe be less visible, you could sew this on with your sewing machine using a navy blue thread, and it would look just fine, and it would take a little bit less time. And Michelle, who just wrote, she wrote, I already stitch, but I probably don't do anything correctly. Let me just tell you a story, Michelle. This is for you and for anybody else who feels that way. I have never taken a home economics course. When I was in high school and junior high school, home economics was offered. It was a course that, basically the way they had it set up was the girls took home ec and the boys took wood shop. Well, I took wood shop. I've never taken like a formal sewing class in my life, and I sew for a living. So honestly, I find when I've been teaching for quite a number of years now, I find often when people are formally trained and they've been taught like the right way to do things with sewing, they often have a hard time with my style of sewing because it's pretty alternative, it's pretty non-traditional, and I think that it's almost better if you've never really had formal experience, because then your mind is a little bit more open to all the different possibilities that fall under the category of sewing in general. So welcome to my tribe, Michelle. I'm so glad you're here. You're in the right spot. This is an amazing community, you guys. It's really, there's so many cool people who show up on these lives and participate and share their ideas. Speaking of which, over the next couple weeks, we're going to be doing a lot of hand sewing. We're going to be doing a lot of garment amending, just changing the way things are to make them more wearable. And we're also going to do some cool little, actually my next project is going to be a little bit more about intention and about setting intentions and making sure that whatever your goals or intentions or dreams are set in motion and made come to realization. So there's my stitches. Now I'm going to go all the way down to the corner. I'm going to treat the corner the same way I did the top here. So I'm going to go over, make a little perpendicular stitch there, reinforce both corners, come back up to the top and finish off with the same stitch. Okay, so I don't want to take all that time to do that now, but I do want to I'll finish this up and I'll post a picture of it on my feed so you can see how it looks. And does anybody have any questions? Does this seem like pretty straightforward? One of the things I want to just say that's kind of a cool little thing is if you're putting a pocket on a shirt And like this shirt has this really easy to follow pattern. So I'm just following the stripe on the plaid to keep that edge straight. And that's kind of a nice little way to start. And a lot of shirts that you find at the thrift store or in your husband's closet, or maybe you have a pile of clothing in your home that you're not really sure you want to hold on to, they might just need a little addition or a little change to keep them useful for you. And if you have a stripe or a plaid that you can start with, that's a nice way to start. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is the placement of the pocket on the shirt. I kind of looked at another men's shirt and I saw that it was kind of like between the second and third buttonhole where the top of that pocket lined up to kind of make it look even and cool. So I just used that kind of formula to place this one. Okay, so I'm really glad you guys are here with me today. I'll finish both of those garments up and I'll post pictures of them for you right here on the social media feed that you're watching. And I'm not sure I can actually do that on YouTube, but I will do it on Facebook and on Instagram. And yeah, if you're watching a recording of this session and you have any questions, if you have any questions as you're working or later, please post them in the comments. I'll be sure to read every single one of those and get back to as many of them as I can. Thank you so much. Happy Thursday, and I'll see you next week at the same time, same station. Have a great week.